LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening and welcome to the second half of the conversation that we started last week with Rotimi, Ashley-Dejo, where he's talking about his personal journey of being somebody who has clinical depression, how he's managed it, how he's turned his condition actually into a message where he's helping others and making everybody aware of what clinical depression is. Welcome back to the conversation. You know what I am hearing now is that when people say something like they've got cancer, we're more empathetic towards them than when they say I'm suffering depression. Yeah. So the idea is it's almost like we've had a split now. If somebody is physically unwell, we can empathize with them, we can sympathize with them. And then when they say, actually, it's a mental illness, then everybody wants to stay away, and then they begin to stigmatize the person. And you said something about when we're in organizations and how we employers actually can also join in stigmatizing employees because you were holding quite a high level post in a big multinational organization and actually admitting that, oh, I have clinical depression could have impacted your career path and they could have made decisions about you that were not necessarily true.
Yes. In fact, at one point when I was in Houston, where I was general manager, at one point I was just tired of the excuses and the lies. You know, today I got fatigue. Tomorrow I got diarrhea. It was just one excuse after the other whenever I couldn't go to work. And I just started to get tired of it. And at one point I had decided I was going to go tell my boss everything. And my wife begged me, please, just hang in there, just hold on, do not reveal, you're going to mess up your career. And I ended up, listening to her and just kind of just keeping mum, and I continued with the excuses and eventually got through it.
Yes, so but I know she did that, obviously feeling that was the best way. We have to keep this together. We have to, I have this thing that I always say, the show has to go on. So now we have to put, make sure the show goes on. But also, I think it brings out an important point for employees, for companies, to look at the way they look at mental health. If somebody had gone to them and said they were unwell in another part of their body, they would have been there to support. They would have been there to say, do you need to take time off? Which doctors are you seeing? If they've got like health insurance, HR will be running all over the place. And they would do, I think, most things to help the person continue working. But when it's mental health, the employee can be looked at differently. So this is also something I think employers all over the world, companies all over the world need to take into consideration, that somebody who is suffering from mental health can perform as well as somebody else who isn't.
No. Can I say something about that? Because I think it's a bit of a sensitive area, and there isn't any universal answer or way to handle that. And I'll tell you why. there are, and it's true that employers need to be sensitized about handling, and many of them will have the policies, the health policies in their books about, HIV, mental illness, how to handle, no discrimination. They'll have all those policies in the books. And many times the decisions being made sometimes are unconscious. They may not even, the bias may be unconscious bias. They may not even realize that they're already, thinking about this person a certain way because of his mental health history or this health history, which is why health history is usually kept confidential from employers. The medical department can have your whole health history, but your boss doesn't need to know what you're dealing with, because it can cause a little some serious unconscious bias. And I said it's sensitive because you see there are certain jobs where the history of mental illness makes it unwise for you to be in such jobs. And that's just a conundrum. So I think that is why I focus more intently on making sure people get the help they need so they can function in whatever job they're in. Because asking someone to reveal to his employer that he's dealing with this so that they can give him the necessary consideration can be risky. And I cannot advocate, one way or the other. People have to make a choice on their own. And I'll give you an example. In 2015, January or February, a Lufthansa pilot crashed a Lufthansa plane into the Alps in Europe. And it turned out that he had been dealing with mental illness. Now, had he revealed to Lufthansa at the time that he was dealing with mental illness, he would probably not have flown again. It would have had a direct impact on his career. And rightly so. At the end of the day, he killed, 300 plus people, took them along with him. So there are real considerations. There's certain jobs, there are certain conditions that preclude certain people from doing certain jobs. It's just, the nature of the beast. That's why I say it's pretty sensitive.
Yes, it is. And yes, I can imagine the pilot knowing that if he reveals this, he wouldn't be allowed to fly. And maybe flying was his thing. Yes. It was part of his identity. And how can I now stop doing what I find so fulfilling? So that's the internal struggle. But on the other end is that he ends his life and he takes a lot of people, with him. And I know this is all sort of breaking ground, like how do employers now actually engage with this? I know clients have come to me and the first thing they ask me, does my manager know that I'm coming to see you? HR knows, but I don't want, my team members to know. I don't want my directors to know.
Right.
So it is, yes, something that needs to be protected. But I think it all goes back to when we accept that something isn't right with us and we need help.
Right.
It starts with the individual, acknowledging and accepting. And I know you did a lot of sort of work trying to hide it from work, the excuses that you mentioned. If we go into what you called your coming out, why did you choose, one, to do it, and how you did it? Do you want to talk about that?
So yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier on, which is the fact that I decided during my last episode, the depressed episode, that I would help other people, that I would help other people confront the ailment, and that I would help to start to reduce the stigma. I felt like a voice like mine would add to the voices of trying to normalize the ailment. The more, hypothetically, The statistics show that there's probably about 50 to 60 million Nigerians suffering one mental illness or the other. And there's a wide range. Depression is one of the most common, but you've got PTSD, you've got bipolar, and so on. So there's a lot of people suffering. And frankly speaking, access to healthcare is limited. How many psychiatrists do we have in Nigeria? Very few, relatively speaking, less than 200, at least officially. So trying to if theoretically we had, out of those 50 million suffering mental illness, if half of them revealed that they were suffering mental illness, then the images we all would have about mental illness will start to normalize, like you said. But because there's such little information and revelation about it, when anybody hears mental illness, the image that comes to mind is the lunatics on the street, and they don't want to be associated with that. So they run away from it, and they don't want to reveal anything. So I decided that, number one, I was going to confront the issue of normalization and destigmatization. I wanted to add my voice, say, hey, here's a regular guy that's had a pretty fulfilling career, has a family, has a normal life, and he's suffered this stuff and has been dealing with it. And living a good quality life. You can too. There are a lot of people who don't even understand what they're feeling. I had a friend once, I went to visit him in his office several years ago, and he started telling me about the issues he'd been dealing with. And I told him, dude, you're depressed. I said, do you feel this way also? Do you do this also? Do you feel this way also? He said, how did you know? I said, you're depressed. You're not the only one. I'm going through this stuff myself. It was a revelation for him. And then he was able to get the right help. But prior to my visit to him, he had been stewing in this feeling. And there's a lot of people like that don't even know what they're talking about. So my voice can help to reveal to people what's really happening. Not just to people, but to their loved ones. If the person who's suffering is hiding it from everybody else, at least the people closest to them may be able to recognize when someone like me speaks and says, hey, is this person just kind of holed up in their bed, refusing to go out? They've changed all their behavior has changed. They no longer want to talk to anybody and so on. They're probably depressed. A loved one may hear that and say, wow, okay, maybe this person is suffering depression. And then there's also the therapeutic value of being able to speak to someone who's suffering. I told you that, my friend came to talk to me. He had suffered depression himself. And I really felt a connection with him. It was really good therapy. Anytime he came, we would talk. I mean, I just felt good for the rest of that day. And sometimes that's all you need, is just enough of a oomph to get through that one day. Sometimes that's all it takes. So I decided I was going to come out sometime. I just didn't know when or how I would do it. But once I left Chevron, I was no longer, in a career, trying to seek the next promotion or that other big job and so on. I felt free to reveal what I had to say. And my birthday was just another opportunity to do it. People do their 50th birthday parties, and sometimes people write a book, or they want you to support a charity, or there's always some big milestone thing that people like to do. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to make my 50th birthday about spreading knowledge and information about mental illness and my experience, and use that platform to inform at least those people that have known me over the years. I think it would make a really big impact on them. It'll give them a little bit of an aha. And I'll tell you, the emotion in the room was just, I broke down, and there's all these other people. I mean, there's a few friends of mine. They've got tears in their eyes. Like, man, there's a friend of mine who died. This person says, man, my wife is dealing with this stuff. I didn't even know what it was, but the way you said it was just so, so that a lot of people could relate. It was amazing, I tell you. And so I am committed. However I can do my own little bit. I certainly, like I said, I've made it my life's work. It's something that I will do, I think, until I breathe my last.
Okay. Because what you're sharing is that there is power in identification. If I
Yes.
can identify how somebody else is feeling. So if I share my story, somebody else says, oh, my wife is feeling that way, or I've been feeling that way, or my brother is feeling that way, or my friend is feeling that way. I can sort of have a little bit of a peek into what their world feels and looks like. And then I think what is quite significant is saying, if this face, this person who's been so successful, who is married, has children, has dealt with this, continues to deal with it, has it, then it might not actually be a big deal if I go to
Right.
the doctor and I say to
Right.
them, actually, this is what
Bingo.
I am doing. And they say, actually, you're suffering a form of depression, because we know depression has different forms. And I think as you were speaking, I was getting this idea of having different faces, like I did a program on organ donation, and then everybody had a little card saying, I donated to my brother, I donated to my wife, I donated to my cousin. So it would be like, my name is Lydia, I suffer depression, kind of thing, so that people can see the faces. It's not that person who is naked and running around the streets. It's somebody who presents well dressed, well spoken, has a career, has family, and all of that. Yeah. So what you're doing brings that. And it sounds like you do a bit of advocacy. You're speaking on behalf of millions of Nigerians who feel don't have a voice.
Yes.
Either via... Go on.
I just wanted to mention that, I think for most people, there's like 3 phases. And a lot of what I'm doing is trying to push people from one phase to the next. So the first phase, I think, is just understanding and realization. It gets a while, some people don't even have an understanding or a realization of what's happening to them. Then once they have the realization and the understanding, then there's the phase of denial. I am not one of those people. Right? And then the final phase, and that's to me is the biggest hurdle that I'm, with my advocacy and my voice, I'm trying to encourage, is the acceptance and seeking professional help. That to me is the biggest hurdle. When I go and tell people I am currently on medication and I have been for the last 2 years and I still take my pill every night. That wasn't so hard. How many people have come out in public to say, I am on antidepressants and I have been for the last 2 years? People hardly ever admit to that. It's almost as if I'm on steroids or I'm on some kind of assist. I've got some kind of turbo boost that I'm using every day. It's almost like you're not complete and you're using drug assist to complete yourself. But that's not what it is. I'm just helping my brain to do the work it normally would. So me revealing the fact that I have a shrink, a psychiatrist. Some people won't even say the word psychiatrist. They're so freaked out about even using the word. They will say, I see a therapist or my doctor, my counselor. They can't even say psychiatrist. It's such a taboo for them. The acceptance is there. There's a reluctance to embrace the fact that I am seeing a psychiatrist. They don't want to be that person. So they'll use terms such as psychotherapist, therapist, counselor, doctor, and so on. So that being ready to accept, moving past denial into embracing professional help is, to me, the biggest hurdle. And that's where we need to really work on, is get people to, hey, you can't do this on your own. You need to get professional help, get a proper diagnosis, and potentially get on medication. My doctor said, my psychiatrist said, Caucasians tend to have depressed episodes and get over it, and that's it. Blacks tend to have, once you start having repeat episodes, there's a tendency statistically that you will continue to deal with it throughout your life. And she said there's a chance that you may be on medication for life. Maybe, maybe not. And you know what I said to her? I said, and I had just come out of the hole, and I certainly was ready to do anything to stay out of that hole. And I told her, I said, Doc, don't I brush my teeth every day? No, it's not a big deal.
I think, if one has experienced being in that hole, it's a scary place. It's a place that nobody wants to return to. And if this little pill is going to stop that, I am going to take it diligently. Yeah. Just as we're talking of identification and somebody else actually stepping out, you tell a story about a nurse that I think she was one of the turning points for you. Do you want to share that story?
Well, really, by the time I went to see this nurse, and I believe it was in 2010, this was when, and I tell you, I started experiencing my clinical depression in 2004, and it wasn't until 6 years later. In 2005, I went to see the GP, took the pill, flushed it down the toilet, and went back suffering, trying to will myself out of depression whenever it came. But by 2010, when I was a general manager, I couldn't allow, especially with the big job I was in, I just couldn't afford to have this prolonged, staying off work, all this nonsense. I had a big job and I had to be present. I couldn't be away. So accepting the need to get help was easier for me in that job. And of course, I had gone through all these bouts, and it was really getting old. You start getting tired. I can't keep doing this. I gotta do something. I'm an educated person, for God's sakes. I can't keep. I'm acting like a caveman here. So by the time I went to see my GP, the nurse I talked about was the nurse who took my vitals at my GP's practice, and she more or less. So I wouldn't say that she pushed me over the hump as far as accepting what I needed to do. I think she more or less reinforced what I was pursuing, which was to get help. She told me a story. She said, "Okay, what's your problem? Why are you here?" She was taking my blood pressure and all this stuff. And I said, "Well, I've been having this on and off depressed states and so on." And she told me a story. She said, "How long?" I said, "Well, I started in 2004. It's been 6 years." She said, "In my case, I'm a medical person. I'm a nurse. And I suffered depression for 10 years. And I did not get help." She said, "In that period, my husband and I got divorced. My children were estranged. My career declined. Everything about my life, I was close to suicide. My life was in a big mess." And the biggest revelation for me was when she said, when I eventually got help 10 years down the road, and I got on medication, I was fine in less than 2 months. And she said, I had wasted 10 years in ignorance when I could have done something that could have fixed my situation in 2 months. And so for me, it was, right, I'm on the right path here. I don't want to wait till 10 years. I think 6 years is plenty. I'm going to go get help now, and I'm going to stick with professional help.
I think apart from the fact that she, in some way, was like the last nail, to convince you that I needed help, because you said, now I have a big job. I can't hide anymore. So you've sort of been cornered into looking for help. And she was just there telling you a story about herself. But I think what I also wanted to bring out from her story is the damage that can be caused when people don't seek help. When we're trying to cope. Her family was lost. Her marriage was over. Her children found it difficult to relate to her, and her career had gone, south. So I think sometimes when we talk about these issues that we're bringing up, it helps people to know the stakes are quite high.
Right.
It can be okay if you are sort of in yourself saying, okay, I can cope, I can do this myself, and everybody else has to put up with me.
Yes.
But in some instances, the costs are high. So her marriage, and that may not have ended if, she'd had medication. The children would have had a better mother to relate to.
Yeah.
Career could have progressed. So, and then sometimes people now end up, alone, no family, no work, and they end up either really on drugs or they end up self-medicating or drinking. So it's like a spiral that happens if we don't look after something that she could have treated 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, someone with a medical background,
Yes.
You asked, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go on. So you were talking about her being
you asked about you asked about the impact on the family earlier on, and I kind of digressed into another area, but I'd like to come back to this, since we're talking about the kind of the fallout of denial and not confronting the ailment. In my case, luckily, I think, my kids were small, relatively speaking. In 2004, when I had my first bout, my son was 4 and my daughter was 2. And so by the time it was 2010, my son was 10 and my daughter was 8. And so those years, we did a lot of travel and a lot of family stuff. So it wasn't all depression. I've been in a depressed state for 6 months, 8 months at a time, stuff like that. But also intertwined with it was a lot of family time, a lot of travel, sightseeing. We went to a lot of countries, New Zealand, Australia, France, and all this. So there was a lot of fun memories. And even though during those times, I think the biggest casualty was my wife. She was the one dealing with everything, trying to sort of provide a cushion between trying to protect them from seeing the full picture and kind of also trying to deal with me at the same time. So she's the one that was basically carrying all the load. In fact, there were times when I was afraid. Sometimes the carer is the one that ends up getting the biggest brunt of the illness. Is the person that's caring for the sick person. So I was actually a little bit scared that she may fall into depression as well, because this is a lot for her to deal with. She's trying to get the kids, sort them out. They're in school, do their homework, do all this. I'm totally useless to her through all this. And she's also trying to deal with me. So all the family fun stuff helped, I think, to kind of dampen and sort of, cloud my kids' memories, because when I eventually went to them last year to say, hey, I'm going to do a big reveal, I think you guys may remember all those times when daddy was always in bed and so on. And my kids honestly told me, well, I can't really remember that. Can't really remember that. But I remember then, particularly I remember in 2005 when we were in the US, when I did that rotational job where I was working on the offshore deepwater rig. I remember my daughter, who was probably 3 at the time, saying, why is daddy always in bed? She was a very precocious young girl. She was always very, and I know she confronted. I remember her making the comment. So in the moment, I know they were aware that daddy's always, huddled in the bedroom. But the memories for kids, some of those memories are easily erased, especially when there's other good times to kind of counter that. So I think I'm a little lucky in that respect. When my kids are now, my son was 19 last year. He's 20 now. But my son was 19 and my daughter was 17. And when I went to tell them, hey, this is what I've been dealing with the last several years, and, explain to them, I wanted them to be aware. And I really wanted to know how they felt about me going public. And I tell you what, it was phenomenal. My kids were just like, Dad, man, I'm proud of you. It's a great thing you're doing. Let's go, let's do it. So now you.
So I guess
Yeah.
for children, especially if they were younger, and there's something in the human mind that we actually like to remember good as opposed to bad.
Yeah.
But if you hadn't gotten help when you did, and they're now more aware growing up, they would have suffered, I think, more.
Yes.
Because you have help now, they're older, they can understand. So they were great. They supported you sharing your story. How was your wife? Was it easy for her to say, yes, let's do this, or did she resist?
2 words. Absolutely not. And I'm just being fair. I appreciate how tough it must be to reveal your private issues, to sacrifice your privacy on a public platform. But and my wife struggled with that. I tried to give her a little bit of a soft landing, kind of telling her I was going to do it before I got to doing it, and then eventually doing it. And she was quite resistant to it initially, but I gradually got her to come around. I remember telling her, one of her issues was if you reveal to the world that you have mental illness in the family, become a stigma on our kids. Sometime in the future, they got friends, they want to get married, they want to build their own families. There's all these African concerns about, when you want to marry into another family, they go do the research on you, find out what kind of, dirt they can dig up. And so these are the kind of things people might say, well, those guys have mental illness, their dad suffers depression. I don't want, now. I told my wife, I said, look, the facts, if we adopt that thinking, if we embrace that kind of thinking, then we are contributing to that narrative, the silence, shaming the victim. We're actually culpable in that whole narrative. And I know that all sounds like a lot of English to her. So it's like, okay, whatever. But I said, if we can save one person, if we can prevent one person from committing suicide, if we can get one person to seek help that they haven't considered, isn't it worth sacrificing our privacy? Because the issue is, I'm a private person. I don't want all my stuff out there. People are going to talk. And quite frankly, my personality, just like my father, I'm not really a respecter of persons, so to speak. I'm the kind of guy, I speak truth to power. I don't feel constrained by societal pressure. I've always been like that. I speak my mind. I'm the kind of guy that in Nigerian parlance might say, I don't send anybody. So I do my thing. I've generally been that kind of person. I'm not too swayed by peer pressure. I'm a little bit more, I've always been a little bit more of an individualistic person. So what people say, tongues wagging, has never really bothered me as much as it bothers the average person. So I think I was just the ideal candidate. My wife, on the other hand, I think is the typical, nothing out of place. We're perfect in this family. Nothing, there's no blemishes on the walls. The floors are always sparkling. We're always in control. Our clothes are never out of place. They're always pressed fine. The family is perfect. Everybody's doing good. My kids are, top quartile performers. Everything is perfect. That's the average Nigerian family picture. Some people go to a great lengths to portray perfection, and so that's a kind of person. That's a general Nigerian thing. Everybody wants to give the impression that they've got nothing out of place. I told my wife, I said, well, we've got to move beyond that. We've got to start thinking about other people and making ourselves relevant and doing things that are positively consequential to other people. Thinking beyond ourselves. The average person is ordinarily and intrinsically selfish. We're all selfish. It's me, it's my kids, my wife, my spouse, my business, my friends, my colleagues, my circle. Yeah. Everything we pursue is about me, and my circle. What about doing something for people outside of that circle? To me, that is what takes you from the selfish level to the selfless level, where you're thinking about the collective and you're doing things for people you don't even know. I am at that point now. I think going through my career and going through retirement and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, I think that's what kind of has accelerated me to that level of thinking where I'm thinking beyond self now. I'm trying to do things that are positively consequential, that will have a positive impact on other people's lives, not necessarily people I even know. Strangers. And that's really important to me.
Yes, I think your wife actually, she used the cultural aspect. And when people go back and say, oh, this family has this and this family has. So what she's saying is that you can do it, but there are implications for the children. There are implications for who might want to be in their life. So now you're making a decision that it's outside you. You're now taking all of us and putting us on show, and that also invites people to critique, invites people to give their opinion, invites people, actually gives them validation to reject us. Because now we are not picture perfect.
But you know what he said? You know what I said the same thing. You're taking decisions that will affect the rest of us. And I said, it's a bit of a people are in a little bit of denial because statistically, every family has a case of mental disorder. It's more widespread than anybody wants to reveal. Everybody's hiding it and pointing at the other people. Yeah, they've got mad people in that family. But you've got mad people in your family as well. So it's just this picture that we're trying to paint, and I just want to be a part of it. And I think my wife has actually come around now. In fairness, I think her concerns were nothing out of the ordinary. It's very typical.
No. Yeah, and they're real. They're real. Because we've experienced, actually, or I shouldn't say I've experienced those remarks being said about people. You want your child to marry into that family. They are known for this, or they're known for that. So it is a real thing.
Lydia, I hear that, and I did a little bit of research because I was going to do a talk with ASAD, which is it's a non-profit anti-suicide and depression squad is what they call themselves. I was going to do a talk, and they wanted me to talk about economics, and I was going to talk about access. And in doing my research, where I found that we have a big shortage of psychiatrists in Nigeria, I found some narratives in the stuff I found on the web that say even the number of psychiatrists that are registered in Nigeria is probably much more than what the books show. But the point is, number one, even though enrollment for psychiatry is low, because a lot of people, their families discourage them from going into psychiatry because people don't want to be associated with that whole space. You're going to be working with mad people. You're going to be working in a psychiatric hospital. Hell no, not in this family. So, that aside, the ones that even now qualify avoid publicizing that they're psychiatrists. So they may not even be registered, they may be off the books. There's probably more psychiatrists in Nigeria than what the records show, because some of them don't want the whole world to realize. I mean, on the one hand, they want to do business and make a living, but on the other hand, they don't want their social circles and the people they have to interact with every day outside of work to know that they're shrinks. So the whole stigma goes beyond just the sufferer. It's even the psychiatrists, they suffer stigma too.
Because we think there is some, because I work with these people who are maybe unwell, extreme cases of people suffering mental health.
You might catch it too.
You go to work and you catch something and come home. But I think
that shrinks. Psychiatrists they're usually not okay themselves.
It's a known joke, we say, and this, I think, a lot of it also goes into the cultural belief about in spirits and their power and the ability that they can sort of jump on somebody and it goes. So a lot of it is actually stemmed in our systematic belief, our cultural understanding, what we've been fed growing up, in Africa. I don't even think in Africa. I think in most cultures who are not Caucasian, because it's something completely different to what we understand or see as normal. Let me use that word, normal, if there's anything like normal. And the idea that actually most people will experience some type of, mental illness in some part of their life, sometime, somewhere. It could even be the mother when she goes through menopause, she might have that time, and when menopause is over, she will be fine. So it happens. What we're both saying is that it happens. It's part of life. It happens every day in every family. Okay, now I think you talked about Assad. Are you that was where I sort of listened in and
Yes.
Thought, you would be interesting to have a conversation with. Are you part of that organization? I'm not quite clear, because you mentioned them all.
Well, I was introduced to them after my 50th birthday party, my coming out. Someone, cousin's husband who attended my party, kind of, introduced me to Assad's, and I've kind of supporting, just participating in their programs. Sometimes they'll want me to come give a talk. And recently I've been asked to join, the team. So it's kind of ongoing. They want me to be a trustee of the organization. So that's still kind of ongoing. I've basically I've provisionally accepted. I want to support them as much as I can. It's a lot of young people, and mental illness and suicide is becoming more and more prevalent among the youth. The teens and people in their 20s. It's becoming it's almost an epidemic, particularly in Africa, and nobody wants to confront it. It looks as if we're in denial about it. So this the Assad is a lot of young people, and they're doing some really good work, but they need, support, and they also need to kind of elevate their structure. So I'm hoping that I can help them get to the next level. Yeah. So
and I think you talked about suicide earlier on and how people can end up there. And just as you were saying, actually, I think suicide is probably the highest killer of young men, even in the UK. So it's something that is more around than we would like to think or even imagine.
Yeah.
So, good that they have somebody who is able to share not only his experience in what mental health, but I think your worldview on economics and career and all that you do and have done and continue to do. We're sort of coming to the end. I know that you are doing this to help somebody to make a difference. And I always use this quote that if you want to change, you be the change. You know, there's no use in sort of sitting back and complaining about something. You know, get into it and make a difference. What would you like to leave us with? Or what is your message? Whether it's message to men, whether it's message to people who may feel, actually, all of this resonates with me.
Well, I'd like to say, sometimes folks who suffer one mental disorder or the other may refer to themselves as sufferers. I'm starting to refer to myself as a survivor. And there's a message in that term, because I may or may not have another depression episode, but I know that I will survive it. I recognize the signs. I understand my triggers. I know the ways to mitigate it when it does come, if it comes. And so I am a survivor because I can live with depression. It is possible to have a high quality life living with mental illness. It doesn't have to define your life. It can become like one of those things you just manage. You know what you've got to do and you do it and you get on with your life. So the first step, like I've mentioned before, is confronting the fact that you have a problem. Get a proper professional diagnosis. You may be fine. You know, the things that you're experiencing. In fact, there's a lot of people that think they have depression, but they're just sad. And they're just going through some issues, and it's not really prolonged. There are some indices that the professionals utilize to determine whether you've got an actual medical condition or whether it's just a passing thing. So you need to get professional help. You can live a high quality, normal life dealing with any ailment, whether it's another organ or whether it's the brain. And if it's the brain, there are professionals that can help you. It's not worth it wasting away your life. Those years that you waste staying in bed, staying away from people, your business is deteriorating, your career is declining. Those are years that you will never get back. They're gone. And the sooner you start to mitigate your illness, your condition, and start to reclaim your life, the better for you and for your loved ones, all the people around you. So my message, the things I do, I take my medication. I have consultation with my therapist, my psychiatrist, every 6 months, roughly. So she sees how I'm doing and so on. I'm basically at the lowest dose anyway, but I think she wants to consider taking me completely off and seeing how it works. I'm a little bit leery of that, but I will do whatever she says. But the thing is, I know what to do. If I'm off medication, I can recognize the signs when my episode is coming back. I exercise. Exercise is like a cheap or even free prophylactic. A prophylactic is something you do or take to prevent disease. Exercise makes you feel good. It's like a feel good measure. When you do a workout, your brain produces endorphins. They make you feel good. They also help your cognitive acuity. When you go out, you're going to work. That's why a lot of people prefer to jog or run or do their workout in the morning before you go do your meetings and all your activity. You go for that run, and you'll be knocking things out like you're on top of your game. So exercise, professional help. Stay on your meds if you're on meds. Be disciplined about your medication, and then having people around you. No man is an island. The kind of counseling, the kind of mood lifting that people around you, friends, family, can do for you is second to none. there are friends of mine. There's a really tight buddy of mine who, when I was right at the bottom of the pit, would come into my bedroom here, and within 2 minutes, we're yapping away, laughing. My spirits are back up. And my wife used to get a little jealous because she's been working for days trying to lift my spirits, and it's not working. And here comes this guy. And within 3 minutes, where and she's like, "Man, what's wrong with me?" I said, "No, got nothing to do with you. I see you every day, so I'm kind of used to see you every day, but I don't see this guy every day. So having buddies, having a support system around you. I call the folks that were around me during my really dark times. They're my lifesavers. Those are the people that saved my life. So it's important for you to be around. You must have a confidant. There must be at least one person that you can tell all. So having people exercise, I'll keep emphasizing the exercise because it's free. You don't have to spend. In fact, you can avoid having to spend a whole bunch of money on consultation and all this other stuff, medication and all this, if you just do exercise. It's like a natural, it produces natural antidepressants in your brain. Anyway, I think I'll stop there. One more thing. I consciously and unconsciously avoid my stressors. My perfectionist nature, wanting to have everything in place. There's a light bulb missing here. I just want to make sure all the light bulbs are on in my perimeter when it's night. I worry about the smallest thing. I used to worry about the smallest thing. My water pump is bad, but I have an overhead tank where at least we'll have water for the next 3 days. And yet I'm worried because the pump is bad, a pump I can fix tomorrow. So there really isn't a problem, but I create the problem in my brain. And this is something I tell some of the folks that I counsel that are in a bad place. I tell them it's not real. It's just in your head. Keep thinking about that. All this despair and all these feelings, I say you can cope with whatever stress is in your life. So this feeling of despair and helplessness and hopelessness is just in your head. You're stronger than what your brain is trying to tell you right now. So don't worry, it's temporary, it's transient, and it will change. I wish everybody well.
Thank you. So from that, I can get, if you need medication, get your medication. You can exercise. You need a support system. You need a body, somebody who will pull you through. Know what your stresses are, and the capacity to let go and just accept some things that we can change and some things we can't. Thank you, Rotimi. Thank you for being so honest, so truthful. Thank you for your time. And to everybody who is listening out there, I'm sure we've talked a lot today. You can recognize, not even in yourself, maybe in a loved one, maybe in a friend. The whole emphasis of this conversation is to get help. Help before it's too late, help before relationships are destroyed, careers are destroyed, help before the person gets to the point of suicide. Till we meet again next week, stay well. Thank you for watching. My name is Lydia Khalil.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.